The median age of the average homebuyer in America is now 40 years old. In 1992, it was 28. That's a generation losing about 12 years of wealth building. And that's not just because they're being lazy or anything like that. Most of you watching this are probably inside that 12-year gap right now. I'm a realtor in one of the most expensive zip codes and areas in the entire country. And I've spent the last week digging through 70 years of housing data, which was a lot of fun, by the way, to answer one question. Is the American dream truly broken? Who broke it? And is there any version of it left still worth chasing? The answer is actually more complicated than any side's gonna tell you. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take that DeLorean where I got my keys right here, ready to go. We're gonna travel back in time to the early 1950s, to the 70s, 90s, and the early 2000s, and we're gonna answer some of the most difficult questions to give you the information you need to understand what's happening with the American dream. Where did it go? Let's go find out. So first thing we need to do is hop into the DeLorean. Let's go travel back in time. Right, Doc?
That's right.
All right, here we go. I'm ready.
This is going to be a lot of fun.
There go the early 2000s, 90s. Oh yeah, I remember the 90s. There's the 80s, always a good time. Look at those neon colors. 70s, 60s. Oh, here we go, the 1950s. All right, let's go take a look.
Ah, the 1950s. Very 1950s. Now let's make sure I fit in around here. That's a lot better. It's a lot more black and white than I remember too. Let's get that color correct. There we go. A lot better. So if I was alive in the 1950s, I would have been working probably at a Ford plant, making about $41,000 a year in today's dollars. By the way, I'm calculating everything for today's dollars throughout the whole video, so that way we don't have to keep doing the math. So my wife doesn't work, most women didn't at the time, and I can buy this beaut of a 3-bedroom suburban home for the equivalent of a whopping $84,000.
That's almost 2 years of my salary.
Why is it so cheap? Well, 2 reasons. First, the government was pouring into housing, GI Bill mortgages, FHA loans, VA programs. Second, the top marginal tax income rate was 94%, and we'll come back to that number in a minute because it's a piece of the story most people get wrong. Now, here's the crummy part. The American dream at this point in time really wasn't for everyone.
Black Americans who actually fought in the war came back from World War II to redline neighborhood maps that told them which neighborhoods they could live in, and women couldn't get a mortgage in their own names in most states until 1974.
So the good old days were only good if you were a rich white man. When I say the dream worked, it only worked for one demographic. Hold on to that, because it gets important. So let's go a little bit further forward in time, and let's see what's going on, let's say, in 1975. That sounds like a good number. I like it. Where did I park? Found it! All right, 1975, here we come. Let's see here. 1975. All right, let's go. Ah, the 70s. Disco, bell-bottoms, better uptake a look. That's more like it. Now here's the 2 big things that happened in this decade.
Number 1, women start entering the workforce in droves. Nearly half are working by the end of the decade, and civil rights legislation opens up mortgages, jobs, schools, and the dream gets bigger for most people, but also requires 2 incomes to sustain. So we quietly shift from 1 breadwinner to 2.
And the math slowly rebases around that. But nobody tells the average family that. Now, that average traveling worker that was working from 1955? What's he making? Let's go check in on him. Where's he at? There he is.
Now he's pulling in about $66K in a household income, and the house that he wanted to buy, that same one, now costs $230,000. So that's about 3.5 times more than the 1950s. Not catastrophic, I can still afford it, just have to save up a little bit longer.
Now, the other interesting thing is around this time we finally start tracking what CEO pay is. so we can actually see what CEOs are making.
And right around 1975, CEOs were making about 26 times what their average workers were making before 1970.
No one was tracking it. I don't know why, they just weren't. But now we can see what that number is.
Now, I have about an 80% chance of out-earning my parents in 1975. Not too bad as well.
Let's go see what's happening just a few years up the road, shall we? Let's go to the 80s. The 80s, always a good time. All right, Doc, you ready? 1980s, here we go. Now, if you remember one thing from this video, this is one of the most important things that you'll need to remember. Something in the 1980s changed in the American economy. Not by accident, not because of nature, but because of a series of deliberate policy choices that just slowly compounded over the 45 years to today. But what was that? Let me show you.
So from 1945 to 1975, 34 years, almost every income bracket wage roughly grew at the same rate. The bottom, middle, top, everybody got a raise when the economy got bigger and better. There was kind of shared prosperity. Then, around 1980, the line started to diverge. The economy keeps growing, but the median wages flatline. Here's some numbers from the Economic Policy Institute in September of 2025. Since 1978, realized CEO compensation was up about 1,094%. Productivity in the economy was about 80%. Workers' pay, only about 26%. The gap between productivity and pay, that's about a 54-point gap. Things started slowly leaking in the 80s, drip by drip.
So what changed? 5 things kind of happened all at once within that decade.
So the first thing was that the Reagan tax cuts and the Economic Recovery Act of 1981, the top rate cuts from 70% down to 50%. Then the Tax Reform Act of 1986, the top rate drops from 50% all the way down to 28%. That's the biggest tax cut for the top 1% of Americans in history. Number 2, stock buybacks become legal. The SEC rules 10b-18, 1982. Before this, companies basically, if they had extra cash, they invested it into workers or expansion. After this, they buy back their own stocks, which inflates the shares, which makes, guess what? The CEO's stock options more valuable. Almost overnight, executive compensations flipped from cash to equity. So CEO pay goes vertical, just almost straight up. Also, in 1982, 3 unions get absolutely gutted. In 1955, 33.5% of American workers were in a union. Today, 10.1%. Private sector, 5.9%. That's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I don't know if you remember this, but when Reagan fired 11,000 striking air traffic controllers in 1981, he sent a signal to every CEO in America: it's open season on organized labor. Without union bargaining power, wages basically lose their floor. And number 4, globalization. NAFTA in 1994, China joins the WTO in 2001, and manufacturing goes offshore. Those manufacturing jobs that I had in 1950s and 70s, they basically leave the country. The cars get cheaper and the jobs go away. Obviously, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's a pretty big simplification, but at least gives you the idea. And number 5, shareholder primacy becomes basically a religion. Milton Friedman's 1970s essay says the only purpose of a corporation is to maximize shareholder returns. And by the mid-1980s, that's the operating doctrine of every public company in America. Anything else, paying workers more, investing in communities, long-term R&D, becomes inefficient. So those 5 things stacked are what changed in the 1980s. And this is important, it wasn't just one party. Reagan might have started the first policy framework, but every president since, Republican and Democratic, kept it. Clinton signed NAFTA, Obama kept the Bush tax cuts. Both parties signed off. So if you're looking for a single villain, unfortunately there isn't one. There's 45 years of bipartisan consensus on it. So I'm stepping out to talk to you a little bit about today because I'm taking a little break from the time travel, because before we go forward in the decades, this is where some videos go off the rails and start getting really political. That's not what's going to happen here. So here's some of the biggest counter arguments to what I just showed you. These are real and they deserve real answers. So number 1, right? You hear that people say that the tax rate, as I told you earlier, was 91% back in 1950s, and that's why the middle class did better. That's only about half right. So that 91% is actually a little misleading. Let me tell you why. First, that 91% was a marginal tax rate, meaning it only applied to income above $200,000. In 1950 dollars, that would basically be about 2.5 million today. Only about 10,000 households nationwide hit that bracket. And here's the tricky part. The only part that got taxed at the 91% was the part above the 200,000. So what that means is that the only slice of their income above that threshold of 200,000 got taxed at 91%. Everything else got taxed at the lower brackets. And number two, the 1950s tax code was Swiss cheese, and it was tasty. Just kidding. But there were tons of loopholes: real estate depreciation, oil and gas allowances, charitable trusts, the famous 3-martini lunch. The wealthy had hundreds of legal ways to avoid getting to that tax rate. So the actual effective rate was a lot different. What you actually want to look at is what the top 1% paid as their actual total income. That was about 45% in the 1950s, not 91%. So let's compare that to today. Today, it's about 30%. So yes, back then the rich did pay more than it is today, but it's not by like 50 points like sometimes people make it sound. It's more like 15 percentage points. Now here's the twist that almost no one points out today either. The 37% or 30% today that people usually code on is also a little misleading. Now here's why. Remember when I said back in the 1980s that most of the CEOs were earning money through stock? That means most of the income comes through capital gains. Stock appreciations, dividends, carried interest. Capital gains are taxed at more of a 15 to 20% rate, not 30 to 37%. The actual rich rarely pay 37% on the actual income. ProPublica actually did a detailed analysis of the top 400 households in America in 2018, and it was super interesting. Their effective rate was more around 23%. In 1960, the comparable top 400 paid about 56%. That drop is actually pretty sizable, I think. So here's the counter argument to that. In 1960, the comparable top 400 paid about 56%. Now that drop actually matters. But you might say, hey Graham, but the rich pay 40% of all their federal income tax now. Isn't that already fair? Also, half right. The top 1% does pay about 40% of their federal income to tax, but they also earn about 22% of all income. That's a pretty big ratio. Top 1% earning about 22% of all income. Yeah, that's a lot of money. And they hold about 32% of all wealth. So here's the tricky question, and I leave this up to you, so let me know what you think in the comments below. So on their income, proportionally speaking, yeah, they're paying what they should be paying, I think, their proportional share. But on actual wealth, it's way less. And the gap between income and wealth is where compounding happens. That's why the gap widens every year. If you have $100 million, you just put that into a bank account and you get a loan at like 0.65 or 0.87%, and you just let your wealth sit there and generate more wealth for yourself while you just essentially live off the loan that you got from the bank at almost zero interest. It's pretty interesting, actually. That's what the ultra rich do, but that's a whole nother video. So here's the other thing that people would say, right? Okay, but isn't it good that people can make their way if they succeed? Big upside in America is the whole point. The honest answer to that is, yeah, in a vacuum, yes. Asymmetric upside is what makes capitalism produce iPhones, SpaceX, vaccines. If you took away the chance to get rich, the economy would slow down and so would innovation. That's basic economics 101. So I want to be really careful here. I'm not telling you rich people are bad. I'm not telling you that making money is bad. We all like to make money. I work for a living. I want to make money too. I want my clients to make money. That's part of the reason I got in this business, was to help people build wealth through real estate. So what I'm going to show you next isn't about rich people, it's about a specific measurable thing, the chance of actually moving up, and what's happened to that chance over time. You can interpret whatever that means for you any way you want to. I'll tell you mine, you tell me yours in the comments below. So here's something interesting, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to say the name wrong, but I did some research, and Raj Chetney's team at Harvard pulled millions of tax records or the equivalent IRS data from other countries like Denmark, Canada, UK, that kind of thing. If you were born in the bottom 20% of people, what's your chance of basically moving up in the world? So if you were born in that bottom 20%, what's your chance of reaching that top 20%? And here's some interesting numbers. So in Denmark, you have an 11.7% chance, Canada, 13.5%, good old Canada, UK, 9%, and the United States, 7.5%. The interesting thing I find about that is that the United States' whole founding story is based on upward mobility, but it ranks last around similar countries. So that means that a kid in Canada roughly has twice the chance that someone born in the United States does at reaching the top. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. I mean, both sides have a point. I think it just depends on your perspective. I just provided some data. Some will say the system needs reform. Some will say it needs more redistribution, kind of like the Danish model. Others will say Denmark is a small, homogenous country and the comparison isn't the same. Or others will say America looks lower because we count immigrants. Or the answer isn't more programs, it's removing the regulations that are blocking upward mobility. Honestly, I think you can argue both sides. And I honestly don't know what the answer is. I'm just a real estate agent doing my homework. But the data itself that I'm finding isn't what's up for debate. The difficulty is that the chance of moving up has shrunk, not just for one group, but for everyone over time. A poor kid in 1955 had a much better shot at making it than someone today. Everyone can disagree on the cure. The diagnosis is a diagnosis. Mobility has shrunk. Now here's the part that connects directly back to housing, which is why I'm a real estate agent making this video in the first place. When wealth concentrates at the top, the wealth doesn't disappear. The people holding it have to put it somewhere, so they buy houses. They buy investment properties. I'm sure you've seen all those memes and Instagram videos of how many homes Mark Zuckerberg owns or Elon Musk. They have all these nice trophy homes all over the place. They send kids to expensive private schools. They pay for healthcare without having to worry about it. That spending drives up the price of every positional good. How do you think Atherton is so expensive, as an example? So here's the thing. So even if your wages went up 26% since 1978, which they did, the cost of things that make you middle class went up 200 to 400%, sometimes even 800%. The math just essentially broke. Not because people are acting in bad faith, not because people that have money are villains or anything. That I would love money. I think we all do. I think it's just because that's what happens when the gap stretches that far. The American dream didn't get killed by a tax code. It got priced out by the spillover effects of compounding inequity over time at the top. That's really more of the diagnosis. What we do about it is where people, I think, disagree. And that's where I want to hear from you in the comments. Let me know what you think. I'm just giving you the data.
So we're back in the DeLorean and we're headed to 1995, right, Doc?
That's right. Let's go.
Okay, so 1995. Here we go. Let's see how we're doing. Where is MTV? I'd love to watch some of that again. Anyway, the median household income in 1995 is $76,000, barely up from a decade ago, which is kind of crazy, right? Houses now cost on average across the US $237,000, and CEOs are now making 400 times their average worker. That's from 26 times to 400 times in 20 years. Now, the kids in 1990 have a 59% chance of doing better than their parents. The American dream is basically becoming like a coin flip. Now, getting closer to the future, let's hit up, let's say, 2015. Sounds like a good number. Back to the DeLorean. So 2015, median household income is now up to $81,000, and you might want to sit down for this. It's pretty much the same as it was in 1997.
That's 30 years of almost zero wage growth in real terms. While the economy added trillions in GDP, housing crashed back in 2008, came back, ran away. The Fed kept interest rates near zero for almost a decade, which pumped access prices into the stratosphere.
Let's get up there. See if we can see anything.
Any houses down there? Anyone? Any houses? This was great, obviously, if you already own, but kind of brutal if you were trying to buy in.
So a kid now has less than a 50% chance of basically out-earning their parents. So the first time in American history, the dream is no longer a default. So I changed back to my original outfit. Let's get forward back to today. See what's going on. Let's go. Oh man, that was a great trip. Let's go back to the office and see what the numbers are looking like.
All right, so back in the office today, let's see what the numbers are looking like today, shall we? Okay, see what we can compare to. So Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae on May 21st say U.S. home prices now are on average about $414,000. and the median household income is $81,000. The price to income ratio is 5.08%. Financial advisors say a healthy amount is about 2.5 or so. So we're nearly double that number. And here's the headline I feel like most people never quote. If wages had kept pace with the average prices since 1980, the American household would earn an average of $115,000 today instead of $81,000. That's $33,620 basically gone. Now the Bay Area, where I work, so the average home price right now in East Palo Alto is about $1,020,000. San Mateo County is about 1.8. If you just look at single families, it's almost 2 million. The average down payment in San Jose is $235,000. That's not a home, that's just the down payment. Now here's the part where it stops becoming a housing story and more of a societal story. About 50 years ago, half of about 24 to 34-year-old adults hit about 4 classic adult milestones: full-time job, marries, kids, own a home. Today, less than 1 in 4, according to the US Census Bureau in 2025. Why? Well, I think part of it is because everything got delayed. The median first-time homebuyer now is age 40. The marriage age is higher. The US birth rate hit a record low in 2024. Multi-generational households, 3 generations under roof, basically are at levels that we haven't seen since the 1800s. People frame this as a lifestyle choice, that millennials are different or Gen Z chose differently. But look at the actual research from the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies from the Hermitage Foundation for peer-reviewed fertility research in November, done in 2025, and they pretty much all point to the same cause: housing costs. You can't get married in your parents' basement. You can't have kids in one bedroom apartment. You can't move closer to a better job if you can't afford the rent. And the dream didn't get rejected, it just got priced out. I'm a real estate agent. I work with first-time homebuyers in every market. And let me tell you what I tell them. You don't necessarily need 20% down to buy a home. You can do as little as 3 to 3.5%. In certain markets, in certain circumstances, it's probably the best way to go. And in some cases, if you qualify, there's special loan programs where you don't have to pay any mortgage insurance on top of that. And did you know that there's actually special loan programs depending on the area that you're purchasing, where you can get a discount on the interest rates and credit for closing costs that help you get into the market, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. And there's ways to help you out. You can house hack, get an ADU, help with the income, that kind of thing. Buy on an appreciating fringe market first, then build that equity, sell, and move into the market that you really want later on. The doors are still there, they're just a bit smaller, and you need to know where they are. So is the American dream dead? Well, kinda, not really. I mean, I think the original version has definitely changed from what it was. The version your grandparents got, 1 income, 1 career, 1 mortgage, 1 house, send the kid to college on it, I think that version's pretty much dead. It got priced out by 45 years of policy choices that shifted the economic gains towards the top of the ladder. But both parties signed off on it, and both parties benefited. And whatever you think that fix is, more market, less market, more taxes, fewer taxes, more housing supply, more programs, less regulation, I'm not going to be the one to tell you. That's your call. And that's why we vote. What I can tell you is what's possible right now. In 2026 in the Bay Area I work in, a different dream, a smaller, more creative one, 2 incomes minimum, house hacking instead of single family purchasing to get someone into the market and start building that wealth. The dream isn't gone, it just costs more, it takes longer, and requires you to know things that nobody taught you. And that's what this channel is for. If you want my actual playbook for buying in the Bay Area in 2026, every program, neighborhoods, every workaround I just walked through, just comment options below and I'll DM it to you. Or just give me a call. It's free, and let me know what you thought about this video in the comments below too. I'm genuinely interested. Can't wait to go on another time traveling trip with you, and I'll catch you next week. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, by the way. Helps me out a lot. Appreciate it.